Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to Brunch with Brent. My name is Brent Gervais, and joining me today, I'm very excited, is Carl Richell. Carl, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks so much for joining me. I've been looking forward to having a chat with you for quite a long time now. I will say I've had many recommendations, both from within the Jupiter Broadcasting crew and also outside to have you join me on a brunch. So thank you for taking the time. Really appreciate that.
Glad I can be here, and the honor's all mine.
Thank you. So we should, I suppose, give a little idea of who you are. You are the CEO and founder of System76. And for those who don't know System76, could you give maybe a brief description of System76 as you see it?
So System76 was founded in my basement in 2005. It was myself and a friend of mine. And we started System76 because we believed that open source had advanced to the point where it was a better operating system than the proprietary alternatives from Apple and Microsoft at the time. We thought that it deserved high quality and professional representation from an OEM, and that didn't exist today. It was common on servers, but not on the desktop. So we set out to be kind of great representatives of open source through hardware, building a product where you could consume it and be backed by both engineering that ensured that the product worked as it should, and also by a great support team and knowledgeable people that when you contacted us for help, you knew you wouldn't be turned away because you were using Linux. It's our first-class citizen.
That aspect of being turned away because you're using Linux is still kind of present today in most of the hardware, most of the common hardware suppliers. I know, I've got a ThinkPad, my father's ThinkPad that has a few little issues, and I've been so hesitant to kind of reach out to them. Since then, I've learned from a few of my friends that they're actually kind of fine with it these days. But so often, that is a tricky place. And it feels like, at least for me, when I started being full-time on Linux, it felt like you were making some compromises and risks there. And so I could see how that being the initial vision would be really a powerful motivator for you. And it sounds very similar to your vision today as well.
It hasn't changed much. Our capabilities have changed dramatically.
Yes.
But I also don't say that in any kind of way to disparage other OEMs. It's also something that's very understandable to me.
Mm-hmm.
We are not a Windows shop. And so we do our best when a customer needs to dual boot Windows for whatever reason, but that's also not our prime focus or prime expertise. Linux is what we do, and it's what we do well and know well. So I can understand those big behemoths being, for being challenging to pivot and offer support and the engineering and the effort that's required to offer another operating system. It also applies to us for Linux in general. We focus all of our engineering and our QA and our effort on Pop! OS, and to an extent, but to a lesser extent on Ubuntu as well as we ship it. And we can't, the expense and the effort to put the polish that we put into Pop! OS into other desktop environments would decrease to us the standard by which we hold ourselves. So even within the Linux space, what we do make the hardware work well with Linux. So at the base level, you can put any Linux on there and it's going to work well, particularly now that we're building open source firmware. But even with that, I understand and know the challenges because that focus is what enables us to ensure the product is going to reach a very high standard.
There's something to be said about picking a niche and really digging into it and trying to support everyone all the time is a surefire recipe to not really be special to anyone, right? And it sounds like you've found kind of a nice recipe that both scratched your own itch at the time and still is, but also you've, from what I've seen, found some really passionate people who love using your products as well.
The formula has certainly worked, and I attribute a lot of that to the focus, to caring about our customers and their interactions. Having, when something goes wrong, we feel it emotionally. It's a very, and it's not just, some of us, it's, we all care a lot. And so these are complex interactions with lots of different hardware and software and firmware all operating in unison. And while some things, mistakes might be made or we might learn new things, what's important is how rapidly one responds to those and makes a situation that might be poor better. And in 15 years, QA is very interesting. So quality assurance, our QA team, and we have all of these different tests that we do across the board whenever we release new software or new firmware or new hardware. And in 15 years, that living document, all those living documents, we've still learned new things and new situations that had never occurred before in 15 years that now we need to test for this one scenario. That where it was never a problem before, but now we've learned that. So it's quite fascinating. But in doing so, and because we've collected all of that knowledge over all those years and documented all of it, it means our standards are very, very high these days, and it's rare that something slips through.
I would imagine every day is a little different than the next, with all of these new challenges cropping up and things you don't expect, and a way to grow yourselves personally as well with these challenges.
That's technology for you. If you're ambitious and curious and want to explore, then there's no shortage of opportunity to find new things and learn new things every day. It doesn't end, and in hardware, in particular. So while I do believe this is the case in software as well, in hardware there are just more variables. You have memory manufacturers that are all working to accelerate what they're building, and processor and Intel and AMD and storage manufacturers. Everyone's working to drive their technology forward, and we are at the point in the supply chain where we collect all of those things together, along with the firmware and along with the software, and build a product out of it. And so we have the opportunity to touch everything in the stack, which makes it even more interesting, and there's more to learn. And we're going into new areas that are fascinating to me. We're working on a new keyboard that it's designed to work very fluidly with Pop! OS and auto tiling in particular. So it's a unique keyboard that doesn't alienate those that are used to your typical keyboard, but at the same time, once you use it, especially if you enjoy using tiling and you like tiling, you find its efficiency to be kind of your cup of tea. It's the type of thing that's addictive. You just can't go to a different keyboard once you start using this thing. Back to the point of we have electrical engineers working on it with our firmware developers, and electrical engineer who also has electrical engineering background. And it's just an absolute pleasure to me to watch these experts in their craft discuss their craft and conduct their craft. It is an absolute pleasure to see real professionals do incredible work together and what the outcome is.
Jeremy joined us on Linux Unplugged and gave us an insight on sort of the background process that goes into some of the firmware tweaks and engineering there. And it was fascinating. I could have listened to that for hours, maybe.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. It's the same. That's the same thing. The same thrill I get listening to Jeremy on Linux Unplugged. I get that every day watching this team talk in Slack and discuss the things they're building. For a geek like me who just loves every day to learn something new and to be, I'm a roll up your sleeves kind of person. I like to be very, very involved, and it's a thrill for me. I learned so much from the team that it's a special place to be.
It's easily something that gets you up in the morning just to go hang out with all these wonderful people, I'm sure.
It does, yeah.
To me, it's like a chicken and an egg thing, which is really interesting to approach, which is, surrounding yourself with great people. I would imagine once you surround yourself with a few great people, maybe, in the infancy of System76, then all of a sudden you get that kind of like amaze at just what that can do for a team. And then so you go and chase other great people to add to the team, and that just grows and grows and grows, because everything I've sort of been able to peek at about the team, and I know a few of them, like Emma and Ian as well. I've spent time with them at Linux Fest Northwest. They're just such great people, and they have nothing but amazing things to say about the team they're on, and they've been there for quite a while now. So I'd imagine that sort of internal culture is really exciting for you as well.
Yeah, it certainly is. We have something special in our ambition and our desire and our fearlessness. And it helps that, when we took on different projects that seemed maybe that were outside of our normal our normal course of action. For instance, when we made the decision to build Pop! OS, we had already known that there were a lot of things that we felt we could improve on the desktop, but we didn't know what the market reaction necessarily would be. I mean, after I guess it would be 12 years of offering one operating system and then rolling out your very own and saying, "Hey, customers, trust us to build an operating system for you now."
It's a big leap, isn't it?
It is a big leap. And out of the gate, I was very, very encouraged because the response was solid, and we only had a few months to pull it together. So we were able to pull together a good product that kind of established where we were going with an operating system and the type of things that we attempted or were hoping to, the value we're going to provide to our customers in doing this project. And the response was overwhelmingly positive. And with each release, the distinction that we were building with an operating system and how it benefited our customers grew, and it was recognized. And so the pre-installed orders from System76, started at 50% pop, and then 60, and then 70, and then 80, and it's going to continue to grow, and kind of, which also means that we get to put greater, we could put more resources and more effort and more focus on building a holistic experience between the hardware, the firmware, and the operating system. But in doing all of that, it grew our confidence that we could take on more. And so the next step was building a factory and bringing design and manufacturing in-house.
Another big leap.
It's a completely wild leap to take for a manufacturer, for anyone, because it's just not done these days. But our size of company, we don't have the volumes that make it easy for us to plug into the supply chains in China. So we can't just go say, "This is what we want to build. Will you build it for us?" And they'll say, "That's too small. We're not going to do that." But we are big enough to make an investment in a factory and manufacture these things ourselves. And there's also the added benefit in doing so. We're able to respond much more quickly with the hardware design in the same way that we respond in software. When there's an improvement that's been identified, we're able to roll it into production very quickly. And now, instead of waiting for the typical supply chain latency, it's a few days when that's rolled in, instead of up to 6 months as it was before.
It sounds like being smaller is a huge advantage in this case.
It certainly is. And smaller, along with what you had alluded to early on, that smaller plus just an incredible team to work with. And being able, as a group, to stack those successes on top of each other have only increased our confidence and willingness to take a chance and take a risk on building new things and different things for our customers that along with listening to them and understanding the challenges and the different things that they're doing, we feel like we can make their computing life, the thing that they use as a professional tool every day. There are lots of areas to make these products better, and we feel like we can contribute for our customers in that way.
Yeah, we were talking the other day, you and I, about how computers have sort of come to be the very most versatile and most widely used tool ever, really. And so how you can use your own vision to shape the way that others use this tool and to make it easier and hopefully a pleasure, I would imagine feels really powerful.
Just to do something challenging and be working on it for months and then to release it to the public and say, here's this thing we've built for you. We've listened to you. We've heard what you said. We think you're right. We think that we can make advances in these ways, and here you go. And then to see that it's received with the same kind of passion and pleasure that we had building it is very, very satisfying. We feel like we're building things that truly make our customers' lives better.
And make the world a little bit better. It's pushing others to also try to do better things, I think. Feels like you're kind of trailblazers a little bit. I remember when I first learned about System76, this would be, I don't know, 7, 8, 9 years ago, something like that. I felt like, oh, geez, these are people who are actually making some of my ideals a reality. And that's powerful. That feels like the things we need in the world a little bit more.
We're talking about this now, very much from a System76 outward perspective. But when we're building these things, it's much more about what our customers are able to do with the products we make. We just want to give them the best possible tool because, while we love what we do and we're passionate about every single part in the stack, the customer and what they're doing is what makes it all worthwhile. When they're out there working to put humans on Mars, to cure cancer, to find a vaccine for COVID, to make autonomous vehicles. These are incredible people making amazing advances for humanity, and we consider it our job to build them the best tool.
If that's the subset of some of your customer base, I could see how that is very motivating to know that maybe you're a tiny piece of some greater team who's advancing, space exploration and stuff like that. That feels pretty cool.
Yeah, it does. I mean, whenever SpaceX is landing, well, it's a little different today because we're all spread out. But before being spread out, we would watch those landings. We put them up on the big screen in the office, and just the thrill of seeing that engine land on a platform in the ocean, and there's the elation of that success for humanity, and we get to be SpaceX is one of our customers. So it's just to be a tiny part of that is special.
I have recently listened to this fascinating podcast. As a slight aside, it's called 13 Minutes to the Moon, and it's a sort of audio exploration of the last 13 minutes of communications for some of the moon landings. So Apollo 11, Apollo 13. And one of the episodes that I would love to share with everyone is one where they explore the computer systems that went into making all of that possible. And I just started, thinking of some of our small Linux-based manufacturers who are kind of doing some similar things. And the computer on this spaceship was like custom built. And in that day was a tiny thing and was built just to do enough. It had no room for expansion, but it did everything it needed to. And that was a fascinating exploration. And it feels like that history is repeating again here in a tiny way, that some of your efforts, because all of that space exploration stuff takes thousands and thousands of people in so many different industries. And so to be a part of that is kind of cool, kind of a slice of history.
Yeah, well, in a way, you're talking about Linux in general.
Yeah.
This is where there are some veins within our community that this was the way I thought also very, very early on, was that, well, if everyone would just work on this GNOME desktop thing, then we could make a better product, and everybody would just jump on board, and there wouldn't be any more proprietary Windows and so forth. And I learned over the years that is not the point.
You've evolved.
Right. No, what's special about open source is that this thing that we know is the most versatile and powerful thing, the computer that we've ever invented, is limited, if it weren't for open source, to just 2 proprietary operating systems. that seems absurd. You've had more brands of cereal than operating systems, and this is the most versatile and powerful thing we've ever made. I think that in and of itself is the reason that the variety and the innovation that occurs throughout the Linux ecosystem is so important. If you want a distribution that's specific for penetration testing, you have that. If you want one that's very specific for perhaps security and containerized workflows, then that exists. There should be more variety, more desktop environment. There can be there's no such thing as too many Linux distributions. Go out there and make things and build things, because that specialization is how we got to the moon.
Yeah, right.
Specialization in that computer is how we got there. That the ability for people to experiment and try and build for a special case is what Linux provides that cannot be provided by proprietary software.
Well said. Let that sit for a bit. What has fascinated me as well in gaining in recent years some insight into some of the development that goes into Linux and some of the collaborations that happen behind the scenes is that despite some of these specializations, there's a lot of collaboration happening, between companies, between different distributions. And so it's at once a collective effort and also an individual sort of vision with that kind of base foundation. And that I found really fascinating, because in our simplistic minds, or at least mine, I sometimes thought it was like, oh, either people collaborate or they don't. But there's this really beautiful mix from what I've seen. And is that your experience as well in the past, 15 years?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. There's no, black and white. It's all the shades of gray. There are areas that matter to our customers and therefore matter to us. And so that's where we spend our time and effort. There are other companies with a different customer base who have different requirements or needs, and those companies work to suit those. And in the world of open source, where things cross, we get to work together. Where they're different, that's not even competitive. It's just that they happen to be different.
Different is good. Different is very good.
Yeah.
I'm interested a little bit more in sort of young Carl and how System76, the idea sort of came to fruition, because I think we have a good sense of what's happening now and it's all very exciting. But I'm curious, the 25-year-old Carl who started this all and was chasing his vision, maybe without knowing exactly where it would head. What were you doing at that time? What sort of was the spark that made you take the leap into creating your own business, really? Can you walk us through that a little bit?
It sounds like a dirty word to me now. I don't know why, but I was a consultant.
Oh, yeah, it is dirty.
So I started out, actually, I think it was 18 or 19. I started at Lucent Technologies as what they called a systems consultant, which is really a project manager who programmed PBXs. PBX is a private branch exchange. It's a phone system that goes into a company. This was before VoIP was the new standard. So I would go in and talk to the, usually an operations, VP of operations or somewhere along that line, and discuss the technology and the company and how the company operated, and then apply the technology to the way the company operated and make sure the project got done correctly.
That's important.
Right. But that also kind of created there's a lot of independence, and I only ate if I was doing projects. So there was already that kind of built-in need to make something, or to make something that was profitable and that had a good foundation. Because there's no such thing as a VC for consulting individuals. So from that, I started moving into technology, offering more services, but it was still just a one-man shop. Really, it was just me helping companies get the most that they could out of technology. And then a friend of mine and I were both into Linux, and we started talking about making a company And eventually, a lot of beer. And so a few years later, we started System 76. And with that ambition to build a OEM that really showed the progress and the polish that open source had become by that point. It's not for lack of trying, but we attempted to get funding many times, and were rejected resoundingly for for with every attempt. Sometimes nicely and sometimes not. I remember being told once that we don't invest in box pushers.
Oh,
Yeah,
ouch.
yeah. That was another time I was told, well, you should probably get some gray hairs on your board. Yeah. So I like to say that, well, instead of getting gray hairs on my board, I just kept working until I got gray hair. And, and it worked out just fine for us.
Was some of that rejection a blessing in disguise? Like, could you imagine what System 76 might be if that cash came in? It would probably be very different.
I'm certain it would be different. I'm also certain that we would have probably fallen into the typical trap of throwing people at problems instead of, as is required when you don't have funding, getting down into the nitty-gritty details and learning these things on your own, how to get past the problems and challenges that are natural in building and operating a company.
It sounds like the hard work that was required there versus, large amounts of cash that you could just spread around actually led to some sounder foundations and harder work, I'm sure. And you getting, your hands dirty on a variety of different projects and experiences within the company, which I'm sure is helping you today.
It certainly does. And those are things that I enjoy anyway. So in hindsight, I'm thankful that that no one stepped up or believed in us. It was great. And I got the opportunity to build, imaging systems and drivers and supply chains and support teams and sales teams and work through each one of those. And in doing so, I was the person that worked in every department doing everything for a long time until we started hiring and bringing people on. So doing it the hard way was better than had we had funding for kind of leapfrogging those pains in the early days. When you're in the middle of it, it doesn't feel that way. Not one bit. It feels painful, and it was that type of thing where I worked for 3 years every day, and that was just what was required to get to where we needed to be to hire people to start taking on different tasks and do different things that were required of building a company. But I'm also kind of a workaholic, so I don't know. It was painful. And what's hard about working every day isn't necessarily that you're working every day. It's that when you're doing it early on in the company, you're also doing it without making any money.
Mm.
So you're hungry and you're working every day and you're worrying about your house payment or your apartment or wherever you're living. And you're just waiting for it to crack open and start making a regular living.
How do you know to stick with it? That seems like a really challenging problem because it sounds like, yesterday you and I were talking about endurance and sticking with things. And yet, you had almost a decade of sticking with it and just believing in it. How did you maintain that, I suppose?
Well, I think it was two things. One being stubborn.
It's helpful in this case.
Yeah, it definitely is. And perhaps a bit naive. The other part was that I could tell that people cared about what we were doing and wanted the product. That was there. The money wasn't there from doing the work. It's just we were simply not big enough. But it was clear that people did care and people wanted what we were making. We just had to keep going until it was sustainable.
Yeah. Hmm. That's the challenge of any business, I suppose. I'm curious if you would give, younger Carl a little bit of advice. What would that be? Is there anything that comes to mind there?
No.
Oh, great.
I feel like that's the kind of thing of it that if I'd given some piece of advice, that the past would have been altered, and I have no idea what would have happened.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Playing with time is dangerous, right?
Maybe not advice. What everyone needs is encouragement. So, advice is good. And so I think just like I've kind of talked about here, is that I'd say stick with it. If you're passionate about it and you love what you're doing, you feel like people care, then you have a very good chance of it succeeding. And so just keep sticking with it. There's a good probability that you're going to come out in the end doing something that matters to people. And I think that's for a lot of people starting out and building things, encouragement and knowing that, understanding that, I know it's challenging, but there's no replacing going through the fire with leapfrogging that effort. You just can't replace it.
Yeah, the experience you come out with on the other end is endlessly valuable, right?
Yeah, and to be successful in a company, you have to do a lot of things really well. You don't have to be perfect at everything, but you need to do marketing well. You need to do engineering well. You need to do your sales and your support. You need to do them well. And over time, you can become really, really good at it when you have the opportunity to hire and bring on your team the expertise in those areas that kind of push your standards forward and push you beyond what one person could ever do on their own. And in doing each one of those different things well, it means that you've gained the experience that when I talk to our director of marketing, we can get into the details about digital advertising and return on advertising spend. And when I'm talking to Jeremy in engineering, we can get into the details about firmware and firmware security and hardware enablement. And I can talk to the support team about ways to take a situation that might be desired results for the customer and using the technology that we've built to reach that result rather than circumventing it with some older technology or something.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of I'm nowhere near the expert that all of these folks are in their different areas, but I've had enough experience that I can discuss these things with them in enough depth and detail that I can help them.
It sounds to me what you're an expert in is bringing experts together, and that has huge value. Bringing people together with a shared vision has an endless possibility to it, and so that sounds like quite a gift to the world, really.
The things that people can do are incredible, and so to be around the experts and they're just watching them in their craft and seeing what's possible is quite satisfying.
Hopefully you feel that every single day too. And it sounds like you do.
Yeah. Every day. It's just honor to be a part of a team building incredible things.
Well, lucky you. I wanted to touch a little bit because our audience might be interested. I know you and Chris Fisher, Jupiter Broadcasting, I don't know, what do I call him? Prospector, the guy who's been around forever doing the things we love. I was curious, you guys have a long history there. You sort of started maybe around the same time and you've been friends for a long time.
Anytime I see Chris, it's like seeing an old friend and you get that warm feeling inside, right? So we started about the same time and he started with Jupiter Broadcasting. And so it was just this kind of symbiotic relationship. They were talking about Linux. We were building Linux computers. And so we could put computers in their hands to help to provide content and different things that they could discuss on the show. And I'll never forget, I think on one of them, we sent this Leopard Extreme desktop, and it's this, the most powerful hardware that's available at the moment. And Chris and Brian were doing a show on it, and Brian hugged it and kissed it, and I think he might have licked it. but, but, but it was just always fun watching Chris and the shows and the things that he's done over the years. I just take a lot of pleasure in seeing other people grow and succeed and what they've done. And so seeing what Chris has done has been, a real pleasure to watch.
Yeah, I agree completely. And like you were just mentioning, for you, I feel really lucky to be a part of it now and to have watched it sort of grow to where it is. So kudos to the audience for supporting everyone,
Oh, and yeah, indeed. It's a strange thing thinking back because I actually don't feel very different than the 25-year-old Carl.
Right. You're still Carl.
I'm the 40-year-old Carl. I don't feel that different. But we are, of course, different. If we're not different than we were, then that means we never got better. We never advanced. We never pushed forward. And there are certainly lots of things I learned. I guess now Chris and I we're getting to be the old guys in the room. I mean that lovingly, Chris. But I guess now we have the responsibility to encourage and help those folks that are the 25-year-old versions of us working to advance society as well.
It's your job to inspire.
Yeah, let's inspire people and bring them up, and you can only see what's possible if you're encouraging and enabling people. There's enough like breaking people down in the world. There's no reason to be a part of that.
It's not constructive anyways.
No, we're not. No one gets anywhere that way.
Is there something you're looking forward to in the next 5 or so years? Either something you're working on personally or within System76, or just some technology coming our way?
Well, this is a pivotal and exciting time for us because right now, so we've designed and we're now manufacturing desktops in our own factory.
Which, full stop, is pretty unbelievable, right? To think where that's come. It's quite something.
Just walking in there and seeing it and feeling it and all the motion and all the machines and everything working is a thrill. It's incredible. And so I just want to take all of that and make more stuff. And so that's where we're at today. So now we're learning new techniques. We're learning precision milling because precision milling can be used for manufacturing laptops. And so our step in between desktops and laptops, we're working on some of those techniques and expertise. Well, it was today, but it's actually 2 days from now. I get to go in and work with the machinists and mechanical engineers on our new Haas mill, and that's going to be a lot of fun. I like to understand the machines because then I get to apply what the machines are capable of in our product design. So I get to go see the machines and work on the mill a bit, and then from there, we'll start working or continue additional work on bringing our laptop design and manufacturing in-house. That, of course, will be a huge watershed moment for us as a company.
I can't wait to celebrate it with you guys. Is there something you would like to put out to the community? Maybe an ask of the community, something you'd like them to try, something you'd like them to think about, something you'd like them to go see or visit?
Absolutely. The thing that comes to mind when I'm thinking about the open source community is its vibrance. It is the wellspring of creativity and innovation in technology today. My message to the community would be to be bold. Anything that you've seen, if we don't have to do, copy features or clone things, do any of those type of things. Whatever Microsoft and Apple are doing, who cares? Be bold, be brave, go out and make stuff, try things, break stuff, just
push the envelope.
Push the envelope, right. You can tell, or you have a pretty good idea what's going to happen if, let's say, we try to build an operating system that's more like more like an iOS because that was successful for them. They've done that and they've been successful at it. It's already done. If we're going to build something, then We can certainly learn from prior art, and we should, but we have to be bold and innovative and creative and push the envelope to really make a difference for people. Otherwise, it's just not going to be exciting enough or valuable enough to turn heads. And turning heads is where it's all about.
I think one thing I'm realizing by having these brunch conversations with a variety of people as well is that anyone can have that boldness and to go do a thing. That's kind of the beauty of open source, but also the beauty of the time we live in is that if you have vision and a little bit of stick-to-itiveness, I suppose, you can create some pretty amazing things with, some pretty basic tools. You grab a laptop and you can build an entire business on one tool. And so that sounds like some great advice for anyone, anywhere, really.
Yeah, System76 was built with a desktop, a VoIP phone, and a lot of grit.
Yeah,
that was it.
And I think the grit is the most important part in that recipe, right?
Probably so.
Well, Carl, if people wanted to get in touch with you, where would they reach you?
It's Carl Richell at twitter.com. Or my handle is Carl Richell at Twitter.
And I want to say thanks so much for joining me with this conversation. I had a lot of fun, and I hope we get to do this again soon.
Oh, yeah, it was a pleasure. I really appreciate you having me on.
Well, thank you.